Hey guys, in this video I'll show you how to find anyone's email from their LinkedIn URL, and specifically this is the cheapest way to do this, and I do have to give the caveat up front that this will be 80% accurate as opposed to the other method being 100% accurate. So if you want to spend like a tenth of the price, this is probably the cheaper, more cost-effective way of doing it, but if you want to be a perfectionist, by all means just watch the other video, which I will link in the description to this video as well. So without further ado, there are three main tools that you need in order to execute this specific workflow. First of all, you would need to have Clay. Secondly, you would need to have Serpa Dev. And then thirdly, you would need to have one email finder inside of Clay. And for the purpose of this, the only tool that potentially sounds new to you is Serpa Dev, and you can get it completely for free for 2,500 free Google searches. And don't worry if you haven't heard about it just yet, because I'll walk you through step by step how you can basically find the email address from any LinkedIn profile. So the first thing to keep in mind is whenever you log in inside of your LinkedIn account, if you go to your settings and privacy, like you can see on my screen right now, and if you then go inside of your settings to data privacy, you should be able to get a copy of your data. And over there, you can select your connections and request the archive, which would look something like this. So it will basically be an export of all your first degree connections. And typically this is the only information that you will get. So you'll have the LinkedIn URL of the person, and you wouldn't have their email address at all, but rather you will just have their company name. And this is the data that we're going to basically then use inside of Clay to find their email address. So we'll use their company name over here. The way we'll do that is we'll download the file as a CSV file, we'll go inside of Clay, and we will create a new workbook. So we'll click on Create New, Workbook, Blank Workbook, and over here we can import from CSV the file that I just showed you, which was the 5 different connections, so 5 different people who you're currently connected to. As soon as you have this data inside of Clay, it should look something like this. And the only thing that we need to worry about, so we can click on columns here and hide all columns, and make sure that you just unhide just the company name. Now, for context, what Serpa Dev does is it scrapes Google searches. So in other words, you can do a Google search for the company name, and it will find you the website of the company. The reason we need the website for the company is to then guess the email address of the person. So in other words, if we can perform a company search for Coca-Cola, we will get coca-cola.com, and we already have inside of Clay over here, we have their full name. So we have their first name and their last name. And this way we're then able to match their full name with their company name and then just guess their email address, which we could just do that way there as well. As soon as you go into Serpa Dev and you sign up for a free account with them, you can go into API key and copy and paste your API key inside of Clay. Inside of Clay, you'll then click on Add Enrichment in the top right corner. You'll click on HTTP API and click on HTTP API. And if you go on Browse Templates, you should be able to find a template for Serpa Dev, and it will be like one of the default templates that's provided for you over there. So you can then just fill in with like a placeholder thing over here. And what we're going to do is basically complete a query. So the query would always look something like this. So let me just put it in here, and we will just basically select just the company name. So we will just select the company name over there, and we'll click on Save and run 5 rows. So what this will do is it will find us the websites of all of these companies. So basically it's just doing a Google search for these company names, right? So it's doing a Google search for Vesta Insights, for Texas Oil Tech, and so on. So if we click on the HTTP API output, 200 means that it was successful. So when you click on 200, you click on organic. And if I'm not wrong, this first one should be the website, which is Vesta Insights, which is spot on, right? So we'll call this domain. So we'll call it like domain, right? So bearing in mind that the only 2 data points that we need for these companies is the company domain and the full name of the person, which we already have. So we have the full name, so we have their first name and we have their last name. Now, this is enough data for us to find their email address, because all we needed was these data points. And what we can try doing straight away is clicking on Add Enrichment, typing in find email, and at this moment in time, we'll basically scroll down and we will go for Lead Magic, because it's just like a random email finder that I quite like. And you would notice here that there are 2 things that are missing. First of all, we need the person's name, and it says the person's full name. And right now we just have their first name and their last name, right? And then secondly, we need the company domain, which I think looks fine, even though like it's a bit funny looking, but like I think it should be passable. So in the meantime, what we forgot to do is we forgot to combine first name and last name, so it's a full name, right? The way you will go about that is by clicking on Add Column in the top right-hand corner. You will then click on Formula, and you will select with a backslash the first name, and with a space and then a backslash last name. You'll then click on Generate Formula, and this way, this column will then be titled full name, because obviously it's the full name of the individual. So we'll call this full name, and once again, it was renamed for us automatically. We'll then go back to Add Enrichment, Lead Magic, and it will be the same column here, and we'll select the full name, the company domain. We'll save and run 5 rows. Now you would notice that the accuracy of this data is not as good as the accuracy of the previous method, which if you haven't seen just yet, you can check in the link in the description down below. I'll try and add a link to that other video. And we managed to find 1 out of 5 contacts. But the benefit of this is that this workflow is almost free, because SerpDev is ridiculously cheap. Like, you can perform like hundreds of thousands of searches for like, a couple of dollars. So if you want to try this method, it will give you a lower conversion, but this is just one way of doing it. But by all means, if you want to splash out the money, just use the Anthropic way, which I will show you in another video. And once again, if you want to watch the other video, I'll link it down below, and I'll link the guide to the other video down below as well, so you can go and try it out. Other than that, if you want this exact clay table, so you can basically import more contacts and try and find their data, let me just show you how to do that. We have these contacts. We can then download them into a CSV file. We'll then go inside of this clay table that we've just created. We will duplicate the table, because once again, actually we can duplicate it at the bottom here, right? So we can just duplicate the table, duplicate table, and it should come up with an empty table which looks exactly like this. And then you can click on Actions, Import, and import some more random people, right? So this is a completely different data set that I've just shared. And this way, as soon as you import them, and as soon as you map all the columns, you can save and run rows in this CSV. And what you should start seeing happening is basically any time that you push more leads into this table, it basically does the rinse and repeat of what we've done previously. And once again, the only sad thing here is that the conversions are going to be pretty poor. Like, you will have maybe 30% on average. I think 30% will be a pretty good result. So like over here, I mean, it's about 20-30% of the emails were guessed. And once again, this is 10 times cheaper than another method that I probably talked to you earlier. So once again, one other thing worth noting, a lot of the time you would see that you get a rate limit error. So the rate limit error will say like, hey, you've spent, you can't run 1,000 rows in a minute, like take a break and then come back to it. If that error occurs, all you have to do is click on Run Column, and after you wait for a minute or two, you will then click on Run All Rows that haven't run or have errors. And at that moment in time, you can basically just rinse and repeat and do that all over again. Now, in the meantime, if you have any questions on this method, there will be a link in the description down below to another video explaining another method. There will be a link to basically everything that I mentioned throughout this. And then also there will be a link to this clay table, so you can get that in a separate guide. Once again, if you want to check that out, by all means, check it out. And what that provides you is basically a template which you can use going forward for just importing first name, last name, company name, and then on the back of that, just being able to find their email addresses straight away. Now, if you found this video useful, by all means, give a like, comment down below, whatever random other clay videos you want me to shoot in my free time on a Friday afternoon like today. And by all means, do give me any feedback if something does not make sense, because I do try and make this as informative and as straight to the point and direct as possible. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching this far, hopefully.